Welcome back to the Pleb Underground live from Tabconf 2025. I'm Phil. Here's Sir Ulrich, and joining us, very special guest. We had to make sure that he wasn't Shinobi. That's right. We've got Bitcoin Core contributor Murch joining us. It is an absolute honor to have you join us on the Pleb Underground. We're thrilled to have you here live.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Okay, so look, let's just dive into the basics right away. What does Murch do for Bitcoin Core?
So I currently work at Localhost Research. Before that, I was at Chaincode Labs for a few years. Localhost Research is a new Bitcoin development organization on the West Coast. We just announced last year at Tabconf, actually, and have now 5 open source contributors in the office right now. So most of my colleagues spend most of their time on Bitcoin Core. I am splitting my allegiances a little bit lately. I became a BIP editor last year, so I get to read all of the BIP proposals that come out and the changes to them. I also, on Bitcoin Core, I'm mostly interested in the wallet, coin selection, transaction building, those sort of things. I help a little bit with website, with outreach lately. I've been trying to contribute a little signal to the conversation about op return.
So if you could actually, it's interesting, right, that you mentioned that you're a BIP editor. I would just like to understand what exactly does that, I mean, obviously we could just extrapolate and be like, he edits BIPs, but what specifically are you doing with BIPs?
Right. So the BIPs repository is sort of a public place where people can present their ideas for Bitcoin protocol development. We currently have about 180 proposals. This is, for example, SegWit or Taproot would be BIPs, described in BIPs, how the protocol rules should be changed. And it's basically a way to formally describe the actual changes you propose the network to adopt, and just a central place to read about all these ideas. And there's currently 6 BIP editors. We sort of help people write their BIBs, make sure that they answer all the pertinent questions, incorporate feedback, address concerns and issues, and that it's just a complete proposal from a technically sound perspective and so forth.
So has this process changed at all since Taproot was implemented, or is it the same process? Would you know?
It's mostly the same process. So the current BIP process we use is defined in BIP 2. That was written in 2016 by Luke Dasher, and we. I've been spending a lot of time in the last year actually working on a new BIP process that I propose in BIP 3. Which might activate any decade now.
Do you have support for this?
So far, a lot of people have been liking it, but I'm looking for a little more public push.
You're getting axed, not nax, right?
Yes. Okay. I think the proposal is not that controversial.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been basically ready for a while. I'm waiting for people to publicly get behind it so we can activate it. But I mean, it's ready. Now it's up to the community to adopt, I guess.
Oh boy. So, we can see how it works in the community, though. Because you know we're going to talk about core versus knots. I'm just trying to warm up the conversation before we get into the
we're gonna get there.
into the mud.
You know, I have a question. You have had you spent a lot of time studying and becoming a good not proponent, but a knowledge base on mempools. And so I want to ask you to define what cluster mempools are and what's the future of cluster mempools?
Cluster
mempools. You can kind of just get into that concept for me.
Okay. So generally, the mempool is sort of the waiting room for transactions, where unconfirmed transactions are kept and propagated.
Mm-hmm.
And so once they're confirmed, they're in blocks, and blocks we have very strong guarantees about them getting propagated. Everybody has to hear about every node has to hear about every block in order to have the full blockchain, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But for unconfirmed transactions, it's more of a best effort practice.
Yeah.
Not everybody needs to see every transaction before it appears in a block. It's mostly important for us to maintain censorship resistance. The censorship resistance in Bitcoin comes from if people start not including certain transactions, anyone can buy some hash rate and start mining at home, create their own block, and confirm those transactions. That's where the censorship resistance comes from. So we want the transaction propagation to work fairly well. So that's just generally mempool. Every node has their own. They are mostly very, very similar as long as transaction propagation is working.
Yeah.
But the concrete idea with cluster mempool is we are doing fairly well for chains of transactions. So from the perspective of any single transaction, it's easy to tell what other transactions have to go before them. So if they spend an output from a parent transaction and a child transaction, the child, you can very easily tell these are the inputs. They have to be confirmed for this child to be eligible to be in a block, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But once you get more complicated topologies like multiple children spending from a transaction or many like very broad transactions, like big clusters of transactions, it becomes more complicated to tell which of those transactions should be grabbed together for the highest fee rate, for the highest fee in a block template. And what cluster mempool does is it instead of looking at transactions in the context of their ancestry only, like from one transaction up to all its ancestors, it looks at transactions in the context of the entire cluster, everything that is related to it. Like if there's an ancestor with multiple children, the other children are related indirectly. They wouldn't be in the ancestry, right? Another child is not in the ancestry of, if you have parent and two children, child A and child B, child A is not an ancestor of child B.
That's right.
But it is related, right?
That's right.
So they are one cluster, the three transactions.
Siblings or cousins, right?
Right, exactly. So what cluster mempool does, it treats the interesting unit of the mempool as these clusters, and it finds an order of all transactions in the cluster. And if we manage to linearize all the clusters, we actually get a full order of the mempool. So what it gives us is, it makes it very easy to build the best possible block template because you just basically pick from the top of the order. And it also tells us which transactions will be mined last. So before, when the mempool overflowed, when there was too many people trying to send transactions, we start evicting at some point, and we do that by fee rate.
Yeah.
But we actually, in the old style mempool, it is not very easy to tell what the transaction would be that would be mined last. And when we have a total order of all transactions in the mempool, we know exactly which transaction would be mined last, and we evict that one first. So faster block template building, more accurate fee estimation for packages. So going back to my example with two children and a parent, that might form a package together. If both transactions, child transactions, have a higher fee rate than the parent, all three of them might be more attractive to put into a block together than any one child with their parent. So you discover this sort of more complicated topologies together.
More complicated, but it's more efficient, and therefore everyone is saving money in the long run. Everyone's saving time in the long run.
Not time, better block templates. It makes it easier for a small miner with little compute to build the best possible block template, like a big miner could with a lot of compute.
Got you.
Okay, so I'm just gonna show my ignorance here.
Sure.
Does this have anything to do with pre-images, or is that just because it sounds to me almost like this mechanism is guessing what is going to come in, and then it's almost like you're gonna compare the, like, okay, so this is our estimate, this is the guess, this is what the actual data is, and then the ordering takes place. Or am I just completely in the weeds? And it's okay if I am. I don't write code. I don't understand
a little
this.
in the weeds.
In the weeds. All right.
So let me make my example a little more concrete.
I'm trying.
So
High five.
we have three transactions: child A, child B, and a shared parent. The parent pays 1 sat per VByte. So let's say they're all the same size. Okay, to make it easy. Child A pays 5 sats per VByte. Child B pays 4 sats per VByte.
Okay.
Right. So in the old style mempool, what we would be seeing would be child A and parent form an ancestor set,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and together they pay 5 plus 1 divided by 2, 3 sats per VBUT.
Mhm.
So if someone built a block template and reached 3 sats per VBUT, they would include these two transactions
Yeah.
together. Now child B has a fee rate of 4 sats per VBUT and
Mhm.
actually pays more than 3, but only after the parent is gone. So child B would be included right after, but it would be picked in 2 separate
Oh,
packages,
okay.
right? Now in cluster mempool, it would see these are all in
All
the same
together.
cluster.
All of them.
And together they pay 10 divided by 3, so 3 and a third.
Yeah.
And at 3 and a third, they would be picked into the block altogether, all 3 of them. So that's sort of one of the effects that you would get with cluster mempool. And
Very
so
interesting.
what we want is we want mining to be as fair as possible. We want someone that runs their own node at home that creates its own block template and has his own BitAxe mining there to be able to build the best possible block template with the highest fee, just like Foundry would. And that's
Leveling
why
the playing
Bitcoin
field.
Core spends a lot of time to have the best possible block templates, and Cluster Mempool gives us better block templates. So it evens the playing field for
Yeah.
all miners, basically, is the main gist of it.
Very interesting.
It's amazing when you think about that we're coming up with ways to innovate Bitcoin. We here at the Tab conference, again, this is where Bitcoin is truly being like, this is where the soup is being made. This is where the sausage is made. And it's like, you talk about the incentives of the smallest participant, and it's like it flips fiat on its head. Like, we are looking for ways where every participant has a fair shot at creating value for themselves. It's just a remarkable situation. Like, everywhere you go, the regular guy has a chance in Bitcoin.
Yeah, very well said. Very, very well said. Sorry, I've got a couple more. Definitely got some more questions here. So for the mempool policy, right? You're just talking about the cluster mempools. So what do you see as the optimal balance between preventing spam, reducing denial of service risks or denial of service attacks, and supporting complex transactions like batching? Like batching transactions. Yeah.
Yeah. So generally, we are trying to achieve a number of different things with policy.
Mhm.
For the most part, we want, as I said, mining to be a level playing field, right? So
Yeah.
if we see a lot of transactions of specific types get mined, but not propagated on the network, this creates an incentive or an incentive misalignment where people are apparently giving transactions directly to miners,
Mhm.
and only the miners that are given those transactions have a chance to mine them, right?
Yes.
So if someone builds out a private mempool and receives very, very juicy transactions through that, they're gonna make more money than other miners, right?
So, for example, we're talking about miners, let's say like Marathon
Sure.
or
Yeah,
Mara.
Slipstream,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, yeah.
Very well, no name dropping products.
No,
here,
no
but,
name drop. But I
let's
for
talk
the
about
listeners,
a hypothetical
Yeah,
miner with
hypothetical,
5% of their hash rate
Hello.
that accepts transactions out of band, and yes,
hypothetical company A.
right. So generally, we would like mining to be the mining revenue should match the amount of hash rate you bring. If you have 5% of the hash rate, you should get 5% of the mining revenue.
Yes.
And when some transactions are only available to some miners,
It
they
both
earn more
inflates
than
that,
their
yeah.
hash rate.
That's right.
Right. So
Okay.
and it's a thin margin business, right? They have a lot of costs.
That's
They
right.
have to pay for electricity. They have to pay for hash rate. They have to pay for cooling. And when they earn more than their relative portion of the hash rate,
Mhm.
they can buy more hash rate. They can expand their share of the hash rate.
It's
So
a skewed
there's
game.
Yeah.
a centralizing factor when transactions aren't available for everyone.
Mm.
There are some other concerns, clearly. So there is, for example, upgrade hooks. You might have heard of native SegWit. There's future native SegWit versions that aren't used yet. So we don't really want people to to use these upgrade hooks. So currently, sending transactions with a taproot annex are non-standard, or sending transactions that spend future native SegWit outputs are non-standard. And that is because we're hoping to use them in the future for new soft forks with new features. Who knows? Maybe if we want to introduce cross-input signature aggregation, we will need a new output type. And then we will use one of those. So if they get used a lot before we use them, define rules for them, it'll get a little more messy when we roll out soft fork. Yeah.
So I may have missed it, but so essentially it sounds like leveling the playing field, right? Making it so that miners can actually more fairly get their share, right? How does that actually mitigate spam, right? Because and again, I don't want to get into and it's going to end up happening, but spam is quote unquote subjective, right? Because not everybody considers it that. I personally think it is spam. But I understand that there are other people that not. But how does this process that you just described, how does that actually mitigate this? Maybe we'll just call it undesired data that is being included with Bitcoin, but it's not part of the UTXO.
No, you
set.
did not miss it.
Okay.
I did not address that.
Okay, sorry.
So, no, so Bitcoin is for money.
Yeah.
And the idea is Bitcoin works while using it for money is the most valuable thing to do.
Yeah.
If it is more valuable to put other stuff into the Bitcoin blockchain, in the long run, probably Bitcoin will not succeed as money. So my take is, I don't really care for this NFT crap. It's not interesting. It is unfortunately not really preventable. And
that's the issue.
Sure, we could introduce policies every other week whenever somebody comes up with a new scheme how to put data in there.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, Bitcoin transactions are a form of data. The blockchain is a data structure. We have a flexible scripting system. There are nooks and crannies in which you can stuff data. If we fork out the inscription envelope, maybe they'll put it in the taproot annex, or the Labit boosts that you might have heard about are in the control block, or people put it in up return, or people put it in payment outputs, or people could encode numbers in the lock time, and that then generates a quantum cat. And so there's like all these fields that we use for flexible transactions for maybe a multi-sig contract, or for like a decaying multi-sig. The first year you need 3 signatures. The second year you need 2 signatures. And after 3 years, a single out of 5 public keys can sign and take the money, right? Being able to do these flexible scripts inherently also introduces the flexibility to put other data. So basically what we afford ourselves when we afford ourselves a flexible scripting system that is exciting to do cool smart contracts with, we also open up the opportunity for people to put other stuff there. And now we can all agree that we don't love these NFTs, but we might disagree on how much effort we want to spend on fighting it. And I'm in the camp where I say, ultimately, I think this is unpreventable. Yes, maybe if we hit it very hard, we might get people to stop doing it because they feel attacked, or they derive extra pleasure from trolling us and do it even more.
Yeah.
Right?
Real quick question.
It's
So
not obvious to me that fighting it helps.
you mentioned about 10 different places, 10 different locations within the Bitcoin protocol, with the scripts that you could potentially put ambiguous, extra, potential, not even, you can't even call it nefarious data, but extra data.
Sure.
Is op return pretty much the most or the least harmful location?
Yeah. So basically, op return was specifically introduced in 2014. Counterparty was popular. Counterparty is a protocol that uses bare multisig, 103 bare multisig. And so bare multisig works that you provide 3 public keys, and sorry, in this case, it's a 1 of 3. So you provide 3 public keys, and then you need to sign with one of them in order to spend it.
Okay.
So Counterparty specifically uses 1 real public key.
Mm-hmm.
So the output is spendable, and 2 fake public keys that they use as data carriers. So they just write 2 times 32 bytes of data into the fake public keys, and that is their payload.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still spendable because they have an actual public key there that can
Right.
sign.
So it
you
becomes
can't
part of the
prune it.
UTXO
You
set.
cannot prune it because it's in the UTXO set. And if
Okay.
you pruned it and then someone's actually spend it, you fork off because that block is invalid
not
from
even
your
there.
perspective.
Hmm.
But from the perspective of the people that kept it in the UTXO set, it is a valid block, right? So
Oh wow.
that was what people were doing at that time. So instead, developers then said, let's introduce an output type that we know to be invalid and unspendable,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore
Op return.
introduce a data carrier output op return. It starts with the opcode op return, and op return makes a script invalid. And because the first thing in that output script is op return, it is unspendable, and we don't add it to the UTXO set. So we basically said, okay, we can't prevent people from doing this. Let's give them a little bit of space where they can do it, and hope that they at least use that instead of using payment outputs that live in the UTXO set forever.
I have a follow-up question about
Sure.
the control block.
Yeah.
Because this is something, I mean, I had never heard of this before the op return debate, and somebody brought it up in Spaces and was like, well, look, if there's gonna be such an amount of noise and crying about the op return, well, we're gonna stick data in the control block. Now, from what I've understood, the control block is part of the UTXO set.
No,
It's not.
No.
Okay.
sorry. Oops.
Please explain, because I had misunderstood that.
Okay.
So it's not. So does that mean that control block data can be pruned as well?
Control block is in the witness. In the witness.
In the witness.
Okay.
Okay.
So let me. I hope you're familiar with pay to taproot as an output type. Pay to taproot.
Yes. Yes.
P2TR.
P2T. Yeah.
So pay to taproot was introduced with the Taproot soft fork in
Yeah,
2021.
P2TR, yeah. Thank you.
And pay to taproot can be spent in 2 different ways, either per the key path, where you treat the public key that is in the output script
Mhm.
as the key that you're signing for. You just provide the signature, and that's it. Yeah, that's the single sig way of using pay to taproot. Very small, 57.5 V bytes on the input, 43 bytes on the output. Pretty good output type.
Hmm.
Pay to taproot combines the pay to witness script hash idea into pay to taproot. So instead, you can say, wait, there was more. You revealed that there was a script hidden in the tab tree. So you could have many different scripts in a Merkle tree. Okay, let me. You can have many different ways of how to spend pay to taproot. They go into leaves on a tree. You do a Merkle tree, go to the root, just like with the transactions, how they're committed to in a block.
Yes.
And then you tweak that into the key, so it's all hidden. It looks just like a single public key on the chain, the taproot output. But when you want to use a script path to spend, what you do is, okay, I'm using this leaf, show the leaf script, show that it was in the tree by revealing the hashing partners to walk up the Merkle branch, and then revealing the internal key of the pay to taproot output. And now you've proven that you had committed to the leaf script, and you satisfy the conditions defined in the leaf script. So the control block is these hashing partners for the Merkle branch and the internal key. That's called the control block. So in order to show that a script was in the tree, you need to provide one hashing partner at each level, and there are 32 bytes. A tab tree is allowed to be 128 levels deep. So you can provide 32 times 128 bytes of data.
Oh, wow.
And then just pretend that your leaf script was at the 128th level and provide all these hashing partners. And instead of actually providing hashing partners, you use that as data storage.
Oh,
That's
wow.
a Lab
That's a lot of
That's
data.
pool.
Yeah, that is a lot of data.
4 kilobytes roughly.
Well, I
And
mean,
you know
for
what?
this,
Because the control block is written in sequence, just the 32-byte chunks. It's 4 kilobytes of contiguous data, and since it's in the witness, it gets the witness discount. So you pay for 1 kilo VByte.
So not only a
Very
lot of data,
interesting.
but a whole lot cheaper
Yeah,
than
so you
what's
get-
going on
It's
with the ordinals.
no, like inscriptions.
Yeah.
It's discounted, yeah, but cheaper than op return.
Yeah.
And it's basically exactly how you're supposed to spend a script path payment in pay to taproot. So it's basically, in order to combat that or to filter that, you'd have to disallow people using pay to taproot script path payments. And we kind of like those. We just had a whole soft fork to introduce them.
Right.
See how this is kind of complicated, the squashing the
it's
spam?
super complicated. It's like you listen to this stuff, and if you have no basis for it, like I've been listening to this stuff and reading about it now for 10 years, and I'm just barely grasping the bottom of what you're explaining, right? Like I'm like that person at the bottom of the hill with the eyes closed and the hands out. I know there's a hill. I'm sure there's steps to walk up it, but I'm like at the bottom step. But I really appreciate you explaining this in depth.
Yeah.
Because personally, like that's what it takes for me to be able to get the light bulb moment to actually understand.
Sure, my pleasure.
Yeah, so I really do appreciate it. I'm gonna move on to something a little bit different.
Sure.
And we're gonna talk about Lightning Network integration. Okay, so you're also a contributor to Bitcoin OpTech.
Yes,
correct?
Indeed.
Okay. What's one of the ways, like the recent core changes that could improve Lightning channel management or splicing?
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think we talked about that yesterday. We started to, didn't we?
a
That's
little
what you were
bit, yeah,
starting
yeah,
to
yeah.
explain. Okay, cool.
So we've introduced a few mempool policies recently in Bitcoin Core in version 28 and 29 that specifically intend to help channel management. So traditionally, commitment transactions have a fee rate that has to be high enough for someone to be able to close a channel unilaterally, whatever the fees might be doing at that time, right?
Mhm.
So you, whenever you make a payment through a Lightning channel, you renegotiate with your peer the update to the commitment transaction. Just the commitment transaction is basically the current state of the channel, right?
Yes.
So Lightning channels are essentially buffered transactions. They are pre-negotiated transactions that someone can just write to the blockchain, right? And every time we send a payment, we renegotiate how much of that would be paid out to either peer.
Yeah.
And we have an intermediate state where we add the hash time lock contracts, where we commit. If you show me a pre-image, you get to pull in the money, right? So in order to make a multi-hop payment, we first add an HTLC to the commitment transaction. And then later, once the payment went through, we roll it into the peer's balance and take the HTLC away. And each time one of those events happens, we write a new commitment transaction. And each time we write a new commitment transaction, we have to agree on the fee rate of that transaction. And traditionally, the person that opened the channel also had to pay for closing it.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a conflict here. The person that is not paying for it would love the fee rate to be high, as high as possible,
Yeah, they don't
because that
care.
makes the transaction
They're not
go
paying
through
for it.
quickly,
That's right.
right? But the person that's paying for it doesn't want to overspend. So there's a
Yeah, they wanna spend the
negotiation.
least.
Yeah, exactly. There's a negotiation what fee rate to use for the commitment transaction whenever it's updated. And in the past few years, we've seen a few fee rate spikes. For example, around the halving with the Runes launch, and channels would just close because peers would not agree on what an appropriate fee rate would be. So we recently introduced a concept called truck transactions, or V3 transactions, to Bitcoin Core mempool policy. And it basically says, if I put a version 3 label on my transaction, I'm requesting that you restrict the topology this transaction can appear in until it's confirmed. Transaction topologically restricted until confirmation. Truck.
So in this case, the fee rate is being calculated after, not prior.
Right. Yeah. So
Okay, so I understood something of what you said yesterday.
Yeah. So track transactions are only allowed to appear in packages to one parent and one child,
Mhm.
and track transactions may be zero fee, but only the parent, because the child brings the fee to get the whole package to be attractive, to be included in blocks, right?
Mhm.
As we discussed earlier, you whatever fee rate you pay gets you in a block template.
That's right.
And so let's say it's April 2024, fee rates go to over 1,200 sats per VByte, maybe even shortly peak at 2,000 sats per VByte.
Mhm.
And I'm negotiating with my peer. I'm running LDK, they're running LND. We have different backends. We disagree on fee rate. We cannot agree on how to update our commitment transaction. The fallback for we disagree on negotiations is we close the channel. And I just paid a ton of money to open that channel. Now it's closed. Now I paid again, and I get zero utility out of that. That sucks.
That actually
We
happened
don't
to me
like that.
recently.
Yeah, yeah.
With anyways, doesn't matter. It's fine.
No, no,
Continue.
sorry.
No name dropping.
Let me catch
I-
a breath.
continue.
You chime in.
No, I set up a get Albi hub.
Yeah.
And that guy's, I mean, that is an amazing product. I run it off of my Start9 node and everything. And so what I did was that I set up the hub so that way we could take our payments on Fountain. I believe it's that. No, sorry. My
Value
Noster
for
payments.
value? Yeah.
Sorry, it's the Noster payments, right? Because we put out articles. And if people decide to zap us on Noster, that goes to the Get Albi hub. And I had opened a channel, right? Paid the fee, did everything. And then all of a sudden I find out that the channel is closed. And I did have to reopen, a new channel. And you're correct. Like, I've paid now double and it's, that channel has been used maybe twice.
Right.
So yeah, I experienced that.
Channels only really are worth it if you do a bunch of payments.
Yes.
To them. Otherwise, it doesn't pay off. And
No.
so we want channels to stay open.
Right.
So what track transactions allows us is to have a zero fee parent transaction, and we bring the fee by the child with the child. So if we use zero fee commitment transactions for our Lightning channels, we can pick the fee at the time of closing the channel.
Right.
We no longer have to guesstimate months in advance what fee rate we might need and overestimate what fee rate we might have to use to make sure that we can get into the mempool with our parent transaction, with our commitment transaction. Instead, we are allowed to pick it at the time we want to use the commitment transaction by paying into the child.
So is this in? Oh, sorry. Were you going to ask something?
No,
Oh.
I was going to deviate. So continue.
Okay, I was going to say after this, I'm going to deviate too. But
Okay.
so how so is this out in the wild now, or is it is?
Yeah,
So
that was included in 28, Bitcoin Core 28.
28. Okay.
And in 29, we also got Ephemeral Dust as and Pay to Anchor. I think Pay to Anchor was maybe 29. Yeah, and together they form an attractive set of primitives that the Lightning implementations want to use to change how they do their commitment transactions. And my understanding is that there's at least 2 of the major Lightning implementations now that are working on using zero fee commitment transactions, and then to use the pay to anchor construction to attach a child, and the child then brings the fee. And since the child can be created by either of the 2 channel partners at the time they want to use the commitment transaction, the fee estimation is now at the time we send. We use the unilateral closing transaction, the commitment, and we no longer have to estimate it months in advance without any knowledge what the fee rate might need to be later.
So to summarize, you can basically say that these new updated Lightning channels can stay open for the semi-active user more reliably.
That I don't work on Lightning directly, so I know that some LSPs, for example, if they see they have a lot of money tied up in a channel and the channel gets no use, they'll close it just because of inactivity.
I'm pretty sure
But
that's what happened to me.
The fee
Yeah,
rate
me too.
estimation misalignment thing, that is a time of the past.
Right.
Once that rolls out.
That's good.
But the inactivity thing might still happen. So I can't speak to whether it generally solves the issue of channels getting closed, because there's maybe other reasons too. But specifically the fee rate misalignment thing, that won't happen anymore, because there's literally no fee rate estimation about the commitment
Right.
transactions.
When you open those channels and you put that fee out at the beginning, that's the time thing of the past. Closing the channels, child transaction. Therefore, you'll pay the sats per V byte at that time of the closing, as opposed to in
Exactly.
the beginning,
Yep.
which is more accurate, because hey, you're paying for when it closes. That could be months in the future, weeks in the future. It doesn't matter, because those fees can be vary.
Right. And also because you don't have to assign any amount to the closing, to the fee, you don't need the channel reserve
That's right.
anymore. So you get to use the entire capacity
That's
of your
right.
channel.
Oh yeah,
I hope it'll generally make Lightning channels a little nicer UX. Yeah.
more robust. So local host research, was your team here at the TAP conference?
Yeah, we're all here.
Okay, you're all here. And you
Yes.
said about 10 people?
We're currently 7.
7. So were you guys presenting? What were you, can you summarize what your role was at the TAP conference, and we're not done yet.
Right.
Like, what were you guys presenting in summary?
Right. Okay. So localhost research is, I think, sponsoring Tabconf this year, and we're my co-founder also is. He came up with the BitDevs concept. He's a long-term BitDevs host, and he has been organizing the Socratic Village at Tabconf for several years. He and other people. So we are heavily involved in the BitDevs Socratic Village here at Tabconf. For people unfamiliar with Tabconf, Tabconf has a main track that is organized by the conference organizers, and then traditionally it had one or multiple villages where other people have their own track and run their own content. So in the past, we've had the Socratic Village, we've had a beginners village, and we had I think once there was a Nostra village, and so forth. So it's sort of a little bit of gives people an opportunity to help organize Tabconf. So we're helping heavily with the Socratic Village this year. We had today 2 sessions already. One was on recent developments in Bitcoin Core. We talked a little bit about similar things as we did today with the recent mempool policy changes, with and other things. We talked about cluster mempool. We talked about pay to anchor and track transactions. We talked about the Bitcoin kernel, which is an effort to pull the consensus rules into a library, so it's easier for other people to build nodes or indexers that use the consensus rules of Bitcoin Core. And
we're live.
We're live and things are falling.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
Suit up.
Suit up. All right. Sorry, Merch.
No worries.
Yeah.
So there has been a very long-term effort to pull out the consensus rules and some of the peer-to-peer code into a library, so other people can run that library as a central piece of their node software, and then just do different user interfaces, different mempool policies, knobs, maybe a address index, maybe something like mempool space could in the future be built on top of the Bitcoin kernel. And
when you say kernel, like you have Bitcoin, and you're basically taking all the essential features that makes Bitcoin Bitcoin. If you pulled something out of the Bitcoin kernel, it almost doesn't. It's not Bitcoin anymore. Is that pretty much correct?
It's been an effort to sort of group the consensus rules, the block validation, transaction validation, P2P stuff into a library.
Yeah.
And now other people can also just include that static library to build their own
static
software.
library. Right. You don't change that at all.
So basically, take our consensus rules, build your own node around it. Yeah. And then we recently had the IPC interface merged for Stratum v2. So it'll get a little easier to work on doing the finishing touches of Stratum v2 with Bitcoin Core as the block template provider, and those sort of topics. So that was one, and then we had another Socratic session on mempool policy that just wrapped up 10 minutes before I came here.
Right
Ah,
on. And
nice.
we appreciate
Mempool.
you coming over here.
Mempool policy. Okay, so on that note, right,
Yeah.
we're gonna dive in. It's okay though. We're gonna stay at a bit of a higher level. I just want to get your thoughts. Do you believe? How could I say this? Because I don't want this to be a leading question. I want you to. So
Lay it on me.
yeah,
fine.
it's like, how could this whole op return debate been different? Because I'm gonna start off with that. Like how could this have been different? And I'll just let you go from there because I don't want to lead it and I don't want to frame it. And yeah, as far as I'm going.
I think this is a hard question to answer because
It really
it's very
is.
easy to interpret hypotheticals into
Yeah.
how it could have gone differently. I think so.
Like,
we developers have been talking about mempool policy a lot in the past few years, especially since the inscription stuff started. Because obviously, it would be lovely if we could squash it easily, but I mean, frankly, who cares about this stuff? But clearly, because Bitcoin is successful as a monetary network, it becomes interesting to do this sort of stuff on Bitcoin, right?
Yes.
But so we've had, for example, Gloria Zhao and I wrote a series in Optech, waiting for confirmation. We wrote 10 articles in 10 weeks to sort of explain how policy works, how we think about it, the aspects like protecting network resources, protecting node resources, upgrade hooks, and like shaping user behavior. Those are sort of the main things that we try to achieve with mempool policy. And so there had been a proposal to drop the up return limit, to increase the up return limit before a couple years earlier, and it was shot down. And the difference here was now we actually had a project that demonstrated that there was an incentive misalignment. They were trying to play it by the rules and use standard transactions to put a little bit of data for their protocol into the blockchain. And because they needed more than 80 bytes, they chose in their white paper to do 80 bytes in op return and 2 payment outputs where they put 32 bytes each. Now, if you put data into payment outputs, those payment outputs go into the UTXO set.
Yep.
And because they have data in them rather than a pre-image, they'll, rather than a hash for which the pre-image is revealed later to show that you committed to the pre-image. This lives in the UTXO set forever. It's unspendable. Right? And if people are going to put data into the blockchain, we can't prevent people from doing that. They can put data in the blockchain. But we would like to prevent them putting the data into the UTXO set forever. Because even in 2140, it'll still be in the UTXO set. And the UTXO set is the minimal amount of state a node has to have in order to be able to validate blocks, to tell what transactions are valid. Is that money spendable? Well, does that UTXO exist? Now, there's also the UTXO proposal that is getting more mature. Recently, the authors of UTXO opened 3 bips to, a pull request with 3 bips proposed. That's BIP 181, 182, and 183. Read the pull request now. It still needs a little bit of feedback to get merged. With the UTXO model, it actually sort of turns around the onus. Not everybody has to keep the UTXO set. You have to prove that your UTXO exists. And when you create a transaction, you send along a proof that you're spending money that exists. So hopefully in the very long run, we don't all have to keep the UTXO set, and we might be less sensitive to people writing data to the UTXO set because you just keep whatever matters to you. But for the traditional nodes, how we run it in Bitcoin Core currently, they have to keep the entire UTXO set. That is the minimal amount of state that you have to have in order to be able to validate blocks.
Mhm.
And if you run a pruned node, that's just a few gigabytes plus the UTXO set. The UTXO set is, I think, about 9 to 11 gigabytes right now. If the UTXO set gets very big, it just becomes slightly more expensive to run the smallest possible node at home.
Hmm.
So, long story short, we can't
story
really
long.
prevent people from putting data in the blockchain.
Right.
But if they are going to do that, we would prefer for them to put it into pruned outputs, into outputs we don't have to keep around forever, rather than payment outputs.
And right now they are around, but future upgrades can easily be made so that they don't have to be. Is that how you're explaining it?
So with the proposal that was made that showed this incentive misalignment, where I started my whole rant,
Yeah.
they were trying to make standard transactions that would reliably propagate on the peer-to-peer network. And an up return output above 80 bytes is non-standard, so it would not be relayed by most nodes, and it would not reliably reach miners through the peer-to-peer network. Now, they could go around the peer-to-peer network and give it to miners directly, but only the miners that have these sort of submission interfaces would receive them.
Right.
And that's currently
Like that company.
probably 2 big mining pools.
Right.
And yeah, we don't want to foster this sort of behavior because that mostly helps big mining pools.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Even if every miner has its own interface, you're not gonna submit it to every single
You're
person
gonna
that has a bit access.
submit to the
Yeah.
one with the biggest network.
Yeah, you'll send it to the biggest 5 or biggest 10.
Yeah.
And someone that runs their BitX at home, they'll not have time to get on every single scheme, how you can receive all transactions otherwise.
Right.
So they'll be at an economic
Disadvantage.
disadvantage to build block templates.
Mhm.
That
So
makes
we
sense.
want all the juicy transactions to propagate on the peer-to-peer network and be available to anyone that wants to become a miner. And that's what censorship resistance comes from for Bitcoin.
So this is going to be a leading question now.
Sure.
Yeah, now I'm going to lead you on
Sure.
this one. But so what do you think went wrong with
Oh,
this
yeah.
whole thing? Like,
Yeah, sorry, I didn't.
No,
didn't
no,
get
it's
to that
okay.
Before, yeah.
no, yeah.
That's okay.
What do you think? Like, what do you think went wrong with the whole entire op return debate? And the reason why I'm saying this is because having been in the space for almost a decade, I've noticed that in almost every single instance that there is a proposal, it doesn't even seem to make a difference what the proposal is. Okay, there always seems to be contention, and we always end up into this. And when I say we, I just mean generally the quote unquote communities of Bitcoin end up in these us versus them silos. So what do you think went wrong?
Right.
And what do you guys think that you can do differently in the future? Because let's be honest, right? Like version 30 did not kill Bitcoin. We're still here. Blocks are being mined. There are people who have
Hey,
installed
there's still
version
time,
30.
okay? Yeah.
Sorry?
There's still time for
Yeah, no,
version
there's still
30
time
to
for
kill
it to die,
Bitcoin, okay?
but it ain't dead, right?
Yeah,
So
not yet,
yeah,
not yet.
so sorry. Go on.
And no, so my very long exploration that I started because I was saying it is a difference in perspective.
Mhm.
The dev community had been talking about mempool policy a lot for a few years. This proposal had been made before and shot down.
Mhm.
What was different this time around was someone could concretely demonstrate how this policy actually is detrimental. And
Okay.
it was very convincing to the developers sphere. And also under the assumption that you accept that we can't totally prevent data from being inserted into the blockchain and inscriptions being a thing that we don't like but exists currently on the network, and a substantial portion of the people that buy block space are using it for inscriptions, so it'll be hard to squash at the policy level. Unless we're soft forking this out, it's going to be here. So they're already putting up to 400,000 bytes of data into inscriptions, and those are standard transactions.
And they are currently part of the UTXO sets, right?
No,
they're not.
No. Witnesses.
No,
are
yeah,
not
that's
in the
right.
UTXO
Inscriptions
set.
are in the witness
So
data.
actually,
Sorry.
I don't love NFTs. I have never
No,
owned NFTs.
none
I've
of us
never
do.
traded NFTs. I've never cared about NFTs.
Right.
But inscriptions are in the witness. The witness is read once to determine whether a transaction is valid. When you
Okay.
see the unconfirmed transaction first, you check everything about the transaction, then you cache that it was valid. When you receive a block, you just check, oh, I saw that one before, I validated it already, and the inputs are still available. Like there was no conflict or something, like another transaction spent that UTXO. And if so, I already validated it, and I can be faster about validating the block because the transaction I already cached that it was valid, right? And then we never look at witness data ever again. So witness data is actually fairly benign. It doesn't live in the
Interesting.
UTXO set,
Yeah.
and that's why it has a discount. That's why we discounted witness data, because it's like read once.
So this sounds
So
like a
actually,
framing problem.
inscriptions are, if you gotta do this kind of shit, it doesn't really perturb us that much as protocol developers. Upreturn would be a little better even, but basically both of those, they pay for the block space it uses. Upreturn is a little more expensive, so it'll grow the blockchain less for the amount of block space you buy. Like if you buy 1 byte of Upreturn, it weighs 4 weight units. If you buy 1 byte of witness data, it weighs 1 weight unit, right?
Yeah.
So you get to put 4 bytes of witness data for the same block space.
Yep.
So you can put more data into the witness, and inscriptions therefore can write more to the blockchain for the same block space. So using Upreturn is kind of more benign because you grow the blockchain less quickly. But neither of those two live in the UTXO set.
Okay.
What does live in the UTXO set is the outputs people create when they do BRC20s.
Yes.
Because BRC20s require you to provide an output with a key where you say, this is the key that owns the token I just created. And just the modus operandi, how they did that BRC20 thing,
That was
required
very
them
expensive.
to put an output to indicate who owns the token, but those outputs are spendable.
Yes.
And it's just they created a lot of them, and that's what grew the UTXO set. And the UTXO set did double in count,
Yep.
but hopefully they still have those keys because they actually want to have those tokens, right? They showed which key.
Yeah, well, they intend to
it's
show
the
this
same
garbage.
Key that they own their
Yeah,
garbage
runes?
tokens with.
No, that's not runes. This
the
is
BRC
BRC tokens.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I talked about these a while ago.
Okay,
This is
okay.
these are actual like tokens within Bitcoin.
oh, okay.
You know, so people can actually make their own altcoins on
It's
Bitcoin.
like the dumbest protocol ever.
It
It's
really
like
is.
writing JSON into an inscription in order to give instructions which coin is being created and how much.
Oh my
Like
god.
JSON, like actual text, not
Yeah.
binary or anything. So it's just very bloaty, but it's in the witness. It's read once data. The BRC20 inscription itself is actually, but they also create those outputs to indicate who owns the token, and they didn't clean those up. So with the recent very low fee rates, actually, if you own BRC20 tokens, please just clean up your UTXOs, okay?
See?
You get back a lot of money because you had to pay 330 sats for each of
Oof.
them. And now it costs 6 sats per VByte to clean it up. So you'll get 324 sats back per these outputs. And they're spendable. So just clean it up, please. Yeah.
Cash back.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So in a way, it's dumb and we don't love it, but it doesn't make IBD slower. Yes, it does grow the blockchain a little faster
Yeah.
than payments because there's just more witness data per non-witness data. So if they used Upreturn, it would be slightly better. But what could have gone better about this whole debate? I feel the Bitcoin community grew a lot in the last few years. It sort of added one more person in between from
like an obstacle.
Chinese whispers. Like we're still about the same number of developers working on protocol stuff on the implementation.
Yeah.
We still know about roughly the same number of people that we
The
talked to
developers
that-
haven't grown as much as
The community
equal
has.
to the
Yeah.
community.
So
Yeah.
there's sort of one more degree of separation, I
Mhm.
guess. And there's just new people that haven't been around for 10 years, that have been reading about Bitcoin for 10 years, that are still catching up. And honestly, I empathize. I don't love the spam either. I hate spam is a very succinct, easy to understand message. Don't
Yeah,
put your
right?
spam on my blockchain, right?
Right.
I've spent like what 40 minutes now trying to explain the nuance of
Yeah,
what all goes
absolutely.
on there in the protocol and how it's a little more complicated and
Yeah.
what actually hurts us, what doesn't hurt us. That's a lot harder to explain than I don't like spam.
That's right.
Right?
It's, yes,
So-
yes.
So we have been talking about mempool policy a lot in the past 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Most in the Bitcoin community had not. We had a conversation for about 2-3 weeks on the mailing list about this concrete proposal to increase the up return limit.
Mhm.
And then someone said, "Hey, Peter Todd, you had a pull request 2 years ago where you proposed exactly this. How about you open another pull request to get the credit for your proposal?"
Ah,
again?"
yes.
And then he opened that pull
Peter's
request,
PR.
and somehow, and like it feels like a day later or so, there were 10 podcasts that were like blowing this up and making this the worst thing that ever happened under the sun.
Absolutely.
And I think we were just completely caught off guard. Most Bitcoin Core contributors hadn't even registered that that pull request was open, and there were 100 people on that pull request saying, "NAC, concept NAC, this is terrible. Why are you rolling out the red carpet for spam?" and so forth.
Wow.
So we were just like, we were in a different conversation.
Mm.
We like the people that were talking about this underestimated how it would be picked up. We certainly didn't expect that someone sees this random pull request and immediately does a podcast on it and says, "Okay, this is horrible. This is going to break Bitcoin. This is," and then it just sort of rolled from that, like an avalanche.
Do you think that it mattered that it was specifically Peter that put in that pull request? And the reason why I'm going to explain why I'm saying this, okay, is because
he may be a polarizing figure.
yeah, he's a bit of a polarizing figure, but more specifically, right, he is the one that has discussed on several occasions tail emissions in Bitcoin, which a lot of us, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I could speak for myself. I'm not interested in that shit.
No.
I mean, 21 million, that's the holy cow. You can't,
Right?
you
Like
can't
it's
slaughter that.
everything divided by 21 million.
Yeah.
You know, so or 20.9999999 or whatever. You know, like I just yeah. So do you think that had anything to do with it?
And for the context, make sure we know that tail emissions are essentially we add on fees for the miners so the miners can be incentivized to continue to mine Bitcoin, which would add Bitcoin, the total amount of Bitcoin after 2140 to be essentially beyond 21 million approximately.
May I add a little
Go ahead.
corrections here?
No, you can't, Merch. You can't. You can't.
No, you're not
correct
allowed.
me.
So
Go.
the block reward consists of 2 parts: the subsidy, the new coins that
That's
are
right.
being created, and the transaction fees, right?
That's right.
So the idea of a tail emission would be to change how much subsidy would be allowed to
There you
be created in blocks. Currently, that is on the halving schedule. Every 210,000 blocks, we have the subsidy. And some other cryptocurrencies like Monero, for example, transitioned from a similar sort of halving schedule to just a flat amount that you can get in every block. Now, funny enough, this is still disinflationary, right? The amount that you're adding relative to the amount that exists is getting smaller. It's still inflating, but
yes.
the relative increase is decreasing, right?
The slices of the pie are smaller,
Right. When
but
you
the
have
pie is
100,
getting bigger.
there's 100 coins and you add 1 per block.
Yeah.
The next block will add 1%, and then you're adding 1 over 101 and 1 over 102, and that is gonna always get smaller, right? So a tail emission is still disinflationary and predicted,
Not at the
predicted.
rate of what we have right now.
but I understand how unpopular.
Yeah.
this
No,
is with
it's
Bitcoin.
because it's like we're going right back in that same direction.
Right.
Right? Of the printing.
There was this theoretical paper, I think it might have been out of Princeton, where they described that under the absence of transaction fees and block subsidy, or
I saw
under
that.
the absence of block subsidy, I think, it becomes completely dependent on whether fees are available or not, whether it's more profitable to attack the previous block or to add to the blockchain. And concerns like that would be much easier to talk about if we had a constant subsidy at some point. And that's sort of where some of that discussion is coming from a protocol development perspective. But honestly, nobody is actively considering this because 21 million is such a strong tenet among the Bitcoin community.
I mean,
I do not see that ever changing.
Yeah.
This will not. It takes a hard fork. This will never be popular.
That's
We're
going to be
not gonna-
No, it's
polarizing.
never going to be popular if you have
Yeah.
1% of the network to say, "Hey, we're going to change it so that you can have potentially less than 1% of the network just by passive reality." And no one wants to have wake up and have 0.9% of the network if they already have one. That's essentially working against everyone's incentives.
Yeah. So,
Mhm. Well said.
yeah, Peter put out that paper. I think that might have been one of the things that made him a little more notorious. He also was one of the persons that one of the people that championed full RBF very heavily. He's behind the Libra Relay client that is maybe
Mhm.
not popular with some people. So yeah, it might have not helped that he was the one that opened that pull request. Sure.
So people are saying, because we got comments, our stuff is live, right?
Sure.
So we've got live in the live chat, which I'm totally screwing up over here.
Can you get it? That one right there?
Oh
one did you
yeah, no.
want?
So Curious Bitcoin was
Oh.
saying, let's just get this over with and get our free coins from the fork. I'll stick with BTC.
Consider that that taxable event.
Yeah, that is going to be a taxable event.
That assumes the definition of BTC. Which one is it?
So one person, hold on a second. One person, let me go back. Okay, if it's paid for, is it spam? This is where we get into the subjective
Right.
spam debate,
So-
right? Because I don't care for it. I think it's garbage.
I-
But I also understand that censorship resistance is incredibly important.
I hope this doesn't
You
come
know?
off as nihilistic or something, but if Bitcoin is not in the long run most useful for monetary transactions,
Mhm.
I think Bitcoin will be very uninteresting eventually and fail.
I agree.
And
gonna be
so
garbage.
if data transactions are more valuable than transferring Bitcoin, I think we're not going to succeed in the long run. So my assumption is I'm working on Bitcoin, the currency. The
Mhm.
Bitcoin network is the network that facilitates Bitcoin payments.
Yep.
I think that we might want to enable more scripting capabilities eventually to build cool stuff that allows us to scale to 8 billion people, 10 billion people perhaps. I want Bitcoin to be usable by anyone. So maybe from that perspective, I might support more work on the protocol. I'm not working on enabling NFTs. That's not interesting to me at all.
No, I don't blame
But if we want to scale up and build stuff like ARC or other types of payment pools,
Mhm.
or maybe shielded CSV or some sort of way to be more private on chain eventually. If we are pursuing these sort of things, we might eventually, maybe any decade now, we'll get agreement on what covenant proposal is acceptable, right? And
Mhm.
what we really want to have to enable the next thing that is like Lightning Network, just very clearly scaling up our payment stuff. Then we need a flexible scripting system. And with the flexible scripting system, we afford ourselves the flexibility that also allows for these spam transactions. But ultimately, I think that sort of stuff is not as valuable as transferring money,
Mhm.
and it gets priced out. BRC20 tokens are like so bloaty.
Yeah,
take
and
a lot of
nobody
block
even talks
space,
about it anymore. It's
and
just garbage
down
that's stuck there.
30x or something.
Yeah.
Like it's jumped the shark.
Yeah.
Just like the other 3-4 spam waves in the past 15 years. People will just go somewhere else and do it somewhere else because Bitcoin, it's too expensive on Bitcoin.
Right.
And as
Yeah.
long as that's the case, it'll just always fall back to being primarily used for money. And that's what we're working on.
Mm.
And so I'm sort of taking a little bit, however hard the wind howls, how can the mountain care approach here. Hopefully, as long as Bitcoin is for money and that is the most useful thing it is for, this sort of stuff will be jumping the shark eventually.
What are your thoughts? A follow-up question. What are your thoughts on this subjective spam? All of this activity. What are your thoughts on this activity being framed as a floor for fees? Like, does that even matter?
I mean, that's kind of how it is right now. So I have
Because
a
that's the framing.
statistics page on like how much ordinals take in block space and
Mhm.
fees and so forth. And my recent measurement was that in the prior 4 weeks was 20% of the block space used by runes and inscriptions, but only 4% of fees paid by runes and inscriptions. So
Mm.
runes and inscriptions are the early adopters of the lower fee rates.
Yeah.
And they are basically buying the block space that nobody else is using. But
Mhm.
as we established recently, the UTXOs had doubled in count.
Mhm.
All of those UTXOs are up for grabs and could be consolidated. Even consolidation transactions would easily price out the stuff that inscriptions and runes are paying right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're currently just using undemanded block space for this. I think the biggest hype is out, has passed.
Yeah.
Clearly, with all the howling about op return, someone's gonna do some shit on op return now.
Of course.
Because
Prove a
it'll-
point.
It'll
Make noise.
yeah, it'll get a lot of free marketing because people are gonna yell about it.
Yeah.
So obviously, someone's gonna make a buck off that. And that too shall pass.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Good point. And it's weird because I guess a lot of people have a hard, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but the specific subset of people have a very hard time with this too shall pass. And I've noticed this kind of pattern in the Bitcoin space where we constantly get, and when I say we, I just mean the community in general, this messaging that there are these time-sensitive decisions that always must be made one after another, right? So if we don't fix this, if we don't do this us versus them, and we don't fight this battle, Bitcoin dies.
Ossification.
Right? Ossification. It's like people don't even know what ossification actually means. And everybody has a different ruler as to what that means for them. So we can't even necessarily agree on a proper, we don't even have consensus on a proper definition of ossification. The only thing we can come up with is just don't change Bitcoin. That doesn't mean shit.
That's right.
So it's very strange. You know?
I would say that software is strange, and most people, most things age, right?
Mm.
Over time, a house will get leaks and need to be
Right.
fixed up and gets a new roof or whatever, right?
Yep.
Software does not age in that sense.
No.
The code, as long as the code is preserved, it'll continue to use exactly as it's written.
Mm-hmm.
With software, it's kind of different. Everything else around it changes.
That's right.
Operating
Yes.
systems get updated. Hardware gets changed. We now use 64-bit architectures instead of 32
Mhm.
byte
Different
byte
address spaces.
architectures, right?
And that's where fallacies
Bits.
get discovered. That's where shortcomings get discovered. As you build one system, you build another system. That system works in and of itself. And like you said, you build around it, and then you find that flaw right there or that vulnerability right there. And so therefore, the software has to evolve lest it be exploited.
Right. So if the software stays exactly the same, but everything around it
Not
changes,
gonna work.
and someone's going to eventually run it on 128-bit software
Mhm.
or architecture or something, the software has to adapt to the new challenges around it.
Yeah.
Recently, for example, we changed how Bitcoin Core punches a port into a router, right? Like if you're behind a router, you might not be able to receive inbound connections. We now use a new way of allowing inbound connections that works with some routers. Previously, we used NatPMP. Previously we used UPnP.
Yeah,
now we
UPnP.
use NatPMP.
Which that's really, UPnP is not good to
Yeah,
use. I mean, UPnP has
we
had vulnerabilities for
we
like
had
20
two
years.
vulnerabilities found in it, fixed upstream recently.
Yeah.
So we now have a library that was written by a Bitcoin Core contributor that's very small, does only the things we need,
Mhm.
and we have our own, and it's hopefully secure and safe and small and easy to vet. So Tor v2 addresses recently got sunset, so now we use Tor v3. We use Linux mostly, but for a while ago, Apple changed how you can sign for Apple stuff, and then we had to change our Apple releases. And so everything around it changes. If we stop working on Bitcoin, I think it'll become unusable in a decade or so. And so Well, it depends on what you mean with ossification. Do you mean
See,
we
that-
shouldn't change the
this-
protocol anymore?
I don't even know what I mean with ossification because my definition is completely different than maybe his definition, than your definition, than that guy standing over there's definition. So what am I even talking about?
Yeah.
And I think that that's the point, is that it's an easy thing to put out there as a pitch, and it sounds good,
Yeah,
right?
but
And it makes people feel good. But
internet
again,
bandwidth
we're
has been
mixing
growing
things.
like 17% in per year in average or whatever
Mhm.
it is, right? So maybe in 10 years we do want to have bigger blocks.
That's
Or maybe Bitcoin gets adopted so much and we find a good way of doing dynamic blocks to maybe have a constant backlog and not be worried about fees falling off. Because after this big hype with inscriptions where
Mhm.
where fee rates had been very high for a long time, now blocks are not fully demanded.
Yeah.
And then suddenly some miner accepts transactions below 1 sat per VByte. Now we're
Which is
allowed to do
happening.
0.1 sat per VByte transactions by
I mean,
Mhm.
even
on the
the
network, and suddenly we have 50 blocks worth of transactions waiting again, right?
That's
But-
right.
But it's a boom and bust, right?
Yeah.
the choice of what constituted a small enough block was subjective back in the day. I wasn't around then, but what the 2 megabyte max, right? Is that what the max size of a block is?
Well, now it's
1
4.
megabyte.
1 megabyte.
So
It
the old
was
rule was
back-
1 megabyte.
Right.
The
one
old
megabyte.
rule, but
And
now
what
is
was-
it 4?
But the
Now
catch,
it's 1 mega VByte, 1 virtual size byte, or 4 megabyte units.
Yeah.
so whatever
Okay.
the case may
That's
be,
what I got
back
before.
then, it's like we chose 1 megabyte because a node in Africa or a node in Southeast Asia, somewhere where we weren't at the peak of society,
Mhm.
would be able to participate in the network. And so it's like that type of change that could easily change in the future. So what does that mean for a small enough block size to be functional, for it to be truly decentralized?
Well, some Bitcoin developers have been advocating for a 0.3 megabyte block for a long time.
Mhm.
I don't think that's currently supported by a majority.
No.
Some people wanted to have way bigger blocks and they forked off and did
Obviously.
Bcash. And I'd say they demonstrated that it was not the more popular variant either.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
I would push back slightly on the reasoning for the 1 megabyte because we frankly do not know.
Right.
Satoshi put that into a pull request that was labeled misc changes. He never explained himself. We don't know why exactly 1 megabyte, what the thinking was, whether there was previously the actual block limit was the message limit and it would have accepted up to 32 megabytes.
Mhm.
There was no limit except for what was allowed in messages. So yeah, Satoshi did that in 2010 and we don't know why, but that was the limit forever. And then for a long time actually miners voluntarily
Mhm.
only allowed smaller blocks. It was a quarter of a megabyte for a while, I think, and then someone just started accepting bigger blocks, and that's how it eventually actually got to the 1 megabyte.
But I remember this during the block size wars, and for me, what really stuck out was this, and this goes back to the whole make a time sensitive decision, right? So the point is that we didn't actually need bigger blocks at that time. We don't need bigger blocks today, and instead, what we're seeing is people who seemingly, maybe, right, are attempting to create importance for themselves and say, hey, you know, you do need these bigger blocks. Bitcoin's going to have a problem, and I know how to fix it, right? I know how to, right? I'm new to Bitcoin, and I'm here to fix it. And this is, to me, this has been the reoccurring story that we see, is people attempting to push changes which today could be centralizing factors, right? That could actually maybe harm Bitcoin, and pushing it for their own personal best interest right now, when really it could be useful in the future and not so harmful at all.
I think it's a
So-
pretty good litmus test when someone says
Yeah.
Bitcoin will die if you don't do exactly what I want. That's generally a point where you really want to analyze what they're
Oh,
asking
yeah.
for.
That's a red
Um,
flag, man.
yeah.
You know,
So I mean that was like Roger Ver. Think of the
That's
babies
right.
dying, right?
the baby's
um,
dying.
But for the most part, I mean, we're people, we're human.
Yeah.
Humans are fallible, and obviously, some people like to work with other people, and then they might end up talking more to each other, and so on.
Sure.
So it's not a perfect meritocracy, but generally, we want people to convince us with their arguments for their technical changes. Why are you proposing that?
Yes.
What is your reasoning? What downsides does it have? What are the trade-offs, and so forth? And so that's sort of the arena. You have to convince people for protocol changes on the mailing list with your arguments. And if your argument is Bitcoin will die if we don't do exactly what you want, I think that's not a very strong argument.
I totally agree, but for some reason it's persuading people who are influenced by tribalism and good versus evil and all of that good stuff, which I know a lot of. We're humans, right? Like you just said, we're fallible. But look, we're going to be wrapping up soon, and we have a very important question here from Bitcoiners, right? Obviously they're listening, and Seed Stainer is asking. He's asking, can you please ask our beloved guest sats or bits? And then Curious Bitcoin as well wants to know. So everybody is very curious. Specifically, are you a sats or bits guy?
Okay.
It's your fault,
So
Rob.
I'll answer that in two variants. One, personally, I've been using sats.
That was Rob Hamilton. No,
Yeah.
but it wasn't in those.
Oh, okay. Oh,
sorry.
Yeah. Personally, I've been using sats, but there's 3 bips currently: BIP 172, 176, and 177.
Mhm.
So 172 argues that we should call sats. 176 argues that we should additionally use bits as like the default, and it's 100 sats is a bit.
Mhm.
And 177 argues that we should call sats bitcoins. So from a BIP editor perspective, there's 3 bips that you can read. Personally,
one.
I've been using sats. I find it hard to redefine a unit that is widely used. I mean, I know what a bit is. I've just not been using them very much.
Well, you heard it here first. Murch said sats. Let it be known.
Well,
Screw the bips.
and also that shouldn't weigh much. I mean, whatever you like.
That's
You can have
essentially
other units and use them. Actually, as long as we agree what the definitions are, it doesn't really matter. We can have all of them at
I
the
know,
same time.
right? I totally agree. All right, Murch, it's been absolutely an honor to pick your brain, and I'm hoping that just by listening to you for the last hour or so, even a fraction of that is going to stick with me. I really do appreciate it, man. I appreciate the work that you're doing with Bitcoin Core. I think you guys, I think that a lot of people, it's very easy to be a keyboard cowboy. It's very easy to spout a bunch of, and I'm guilty of this type of stuff too. We're all humans, right? But just, spouting toxic, absolutely horrible stuff. People do not realize the pressure. I think that you guys, that anybody who is coding anything that is mission critical, and I can put that into the category of finance or money, right? And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate how difficult that is. So we really appreciate your contribution and your time, man.
I just want to say it's humbling just sitting right next to you, man. You're a legend. You do good work.
Yeah,
and coming to an event like this, this is what you come here for. You come here to be humbled. Bitcoin is bigger than
all of us.
It's bigger than all of us. It's bigger than pumping your bags. It's bigger than number go up. Like I've said all week, we're here to figure out the reasons why Bitcoin has its value. And Murch is helping us understand a little bit of that. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. And yes, let's attack ideas, not people.
Yes, exactly. He's absolutely right. Let's attack ideas, not people. I am guilty of attacking people as well, and I try to do it less. Guys, I'm
not guilty at all.
He's not. He's Ulrich. He's just a better version,
All right. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you
very
so much
for having me.
Guys, that is going to do it for us for today, live from Tabconf. Join us, Tabconf 2025. Join us tomorrow. We're going to have more news, more interviews, more fun. It's going to do it. All right, guys, take it easy.
Thank you.